If you're not familiar, every year for the month of October, I drop a review daily on a random horror flick here on Connor's Comics. In the past, I've done long written reviews on Facebook posts, but this year, we're going forward. They're all YouTube videos. So for the fourth year and the first one on YouTube, I had to do FrankenHooker. And of course, I had to watch the Joe Bob Briggs version. I've seen it over and over again by myself, but I had to get Joe's take. Finally, I get to talk about one of my favorite films of all time. Yes, you heard me right. I have this one up there with Star Wars The Holiday Special, Godzilla Final Wars, Forrest Gump is, some of my favorite movies of all time. Directed by Frank Henenlotter, who had made other classics I've covered in the past, like Basket Case and Brain Damage to name. This being my favorite of his films, and for good reason. Having the best aspects of the two previous mentioned films, and so much more character to it, it makes for a never-ending fun watch every time. Since I took this watch through alongside Joe Bob Briggs, Joe starts us off with 14 dead bodies, 27 breasts, exploding heads, exploding hookers, exploding guinea pigs, spewing body parts. Whew, you get the gist. The film stars James Lawrence as Jeffrey Franken and Patty Mullen as FrankenHooker herself, alongside collaboration from Robert Martin, the founder of Fangoria. FrankenHooker follows a heartbroken man after his fiancée was killed in a lawn mowing accident. Yeah, that's the kind of movie we're installed for. Franken goes on stealing her head and puts it in this concoction he made to keep it fresh. He also used this to keep a half-brain, half-eye alive in a fish tank. Knowing to bring her back to life, he needs body parts, so he sets off for the grungiest part of New York City. This is where we get great shots in New York during the crack epidemic of real streets and even Times Square. Hell, even real hookers made it into the film. But it's here that Jeffrey makes his way to a bar packed with women and drug addicts where a local pimp, Zorro, resides. He gets 7 of Zorro's best hookers into a hotel room and where he measures them out. He ends up having second guesses, but ladies find his... He made up this super crack himself, which eventually gets us the greatest shots in the movie where mannequins just start exploding. I guess the enhanced drugs are too much for them. Jeffrey then apologizes to the now dead women as he takes trash bags of their body parts down the fire escape. Back home, he sews and zaps them all together, leaving the spare part in the freezer. We get a great moment where he lives up to his last name, bringing the body back to life, and his girl isn't the same, muttering the same lines over and over again the hookers had repeated earlier in the film. Same as the VHS of the film, all we hear is, "Want a date?" She knocks Jeffrey aside and sets off for New York City. Making her way back to the hotel after electrocuting 2 men to death, Zorro follows her and Jeffrey back home, where he fixes her up and her personality's back. And he boasts about how he fixed his notes and he did it all, but as soon as they reunite, Zorro decapitates Jeffrey. Zorro yells out to his host from beyond and, well, they answer, looking like mutilated society like globs of remaining hooker body parts. They spew out of the freezer, pulling Zorro back in. The film ends with a twist ending. Jeffrey wakes up. His fiancée boasts about how she followed his notes so closely, and he resides in a mutilated jigsaw body part of the leftover hookers. It's ridiculous. This movie's exactly that, though. Ridiculous. It's such a great schlocky film that you cannot take seriously. Joe Bob actually brings Frank and James on with him, and they talk about the making of the film, which is very fascinating to hear about. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. Much like Basket Case, seeing the grunge-filled New York City street life in the late 80s, early 90s is really a true time capsule this film represents so well. So much care went into this horror comedy, which leads me to call it the best of its genre. It walks that tightrope so well, the perfect mix of both. I love how the movie is a reference to The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and the eye in the brain helps the film reference its source material even further. It also being in the same universe as Basket Case is fun to me, since Beverly Boner returns playing Casey on Jeffrey's TV, also referencing her organization HOOKER, which stands for Hold On to Our Knowledge of Equal Rights. Hooker, because it's Franken... never mind. This film also is a classic poem and a song hidden in the first hotel scene that shouldn't go unnoticed. Another plus to the Joe Bob Briggs version, Darcy bringing out her infamous FrankenHooker cosplay as they read a heartwarming fan letter to end off the night. If I could leave you all with one thing, it's definitely give FrankenHooker a watch. It's a true classic.
So you've seen her? She's in the bar! God bless.
Want a date?